Hey everybody, it's Saint Polaris here. First name Saint, last name Polaris. And today, we're gonna have Tier Zoo for the first time. Mostly because I've seen every other Tier Zoo video out there. Because I, if you didn't know, am a massive nerd for animals. I just love them, especially because I am half animal. So, really excited for this one. I haven't seen a new video of his in a while. I guess except for the bat one. So, let's just get into it, huh? Okay. Whoa! The balls.
Snakes are one of the most feared classes in the game, with a number of powerful builds and a vast array of uniquely lethal abilities. However, some of these strategies have clearly been more successful than others. So in this video, which was sponsored by CuriosityStream, we'll be going over the snake tier list to see which builds rank highest. But before we get into looking at specific snake builds, let's do an overview of the basic attributes and special abilities the snake faction has access to, as well as a quick rundown of the history of the snake faction. So, snakes are one of the newer factions in the game. Joining the game's roster during the latter part of the Mesozoic expansion, they began as a niche offshoot of the lizard faction that was specifically adapted to burrowing gameplay. And in order to best min-max for the most efficient burrowing, this player base eventually opted to completely drop the legs attribute. This ended up being a far more successful gambit than anyone could have anticipated, as it not only granted these lizards better burrowing ability, but also opened up a bunch of other strategies to them. While the snake build first hit the scene during a metagame dominated by dinosaurs, they didn't become a huge threat in the meta until after the main dinosaur powerhouses were banned in the KT balance patch. During this chaotic post-banwave meta, snake players experimented with some crazy builds.
That is so horrifying.
The giant Titanoboa
that is
build.
fucking horrifying.
While Titanoboa's giant size granted
that's
it
so
success,
scary and
I think
intimidating.
the strategies that the snake player base went on to specialize in are even more effective.
Really?
Fast forward to today's meta, and snakes are one of the most successful predator factions in the game, owing this success to a handful of powerful, unique abilities. The most obvious of these is Slithering, the snake's unique mobility option that it gained in exchange for losing its legs. At first glance, this might seem extremely limiting, as snakes cannot jump and move more slowly than they would if they could run.
Yeah.
And while those are significant limitations, the ability to slither does open up a lot of other options to snake mains. Rather than jumping over barriers, snakes can oftentimes find a way to slither through them.
That's so cool.
This gives snakes access to a lot of areas of the map that are normally much more difficult to access, and means things like dens, nests, and other player-constructed bases are often less effective at keeping snake players out, which makes them one of the best classes at spawn killing. Slithering also allows a comparatively large build to remain very close to the ground and benefit from the stealth bonus of even the shortest grass and foliage. Despite not having claws,
really good point.
Snakes make for highly effective climbers, making it very difficult to ever truly get out of reach of a snake. Still, as a rushdown option, slithering tends to be too slow to reliably catch up to other players. So while snakes may not have the ability to chase you down, they've spec'd their movement kit to ensure that nowhere is ever truly safe from them, and if you let your guard down, they'll be poised to capitalize on that. A snake's basic strike is a little on the weak side for such a dangerous predator. Their bites can't deal that much damage on their own and are easily blocked by armor.
That's why they have the venom.
It's for this reason that snakes tend to spec into various venom effects to infuse their bites with. Snake venom can have a variety of status effects, which we'll get into more as we progress through the tier list, but in general, venom greatly increases the damage potential a snake can deal with its bite. Without this, many snakes would have no means of defense and would be completely helpless when caught out in the open.
That's true.
Instead, snakes are one of the most feared classes in the game. But which snakes should be feared the most? For that, let's get into the tier list. So, the lower tiers on this list contain members of the snake faction known as Colubrids. This is the largest group of snakes and contains almost every snake build in the game, except for the ones you're actually afraid of.
Really?
Starting at the very bottom of this group, we have the garter snake, one of the weakest snake builds in the game. Data miners are actually unsure whether or not this build is venomous, but if it is, it's some of the weakest venom in the game.
Really?
And with no other offensive abilities, the garter snake essentially only has favorable matchups against things far smaller than it, like frogs and mice. Because they're so vulnerable, Garter snake
Oh,
players
look at
love
that
to attack
thing.
aquatic targets like tadpoles and small fish, but they have no actual abilities that
so
synergize with this
cute.
playstyle, nor is it a particularly good swimmer, and therefore takes on considerable risk when they venture into the water. Garter snakes are also caught in an endless loop of wasting a ton of evolution points, evolving extreme toxin resistance to the poison of a specific newt build. This isn't very efficient, but I guess the garter snake needs to preserve its few favorable matchups.
That
Next
newt
in
was
F tier we have the
adorable.
racer snake. This is a snake build that put an above average number of evolution points into mobility, making it one of the fastest snake builds in the game.
That's still
That's
horrifying
not really
to
saying
see.
a lot, given that snakes tend to have pretty poor movement speed. But credit where credit is due, this does give them a much better chance of dashing into cover when under attack. Unfortunately, as with a lot of mobility-centric builds, this alone isn't enough to make them competitively viable.
Damn,
In
yo!
fact, even with their above-average slithering
That cat
speed,
had the
they're
showering
usually still
gun.
too slow to chase down many of their preferred attack targets. They're also worse climbers than most snakes, making them one of the few snakes that can be countered by simply climbing out of reach. In almost all cases, a snake's worst matchup is against birds, and unfortunately for the racer snake, speed usually isn't much use against a surprise aerial attack. Their lack of practical applications for their signature abilities plants them firmly in F tier for me. Next on the tier list we have the vine snake. Now, there are many
So
highly
pretty,
effective
holy
arboreal
shit.
snake builds, and all things
Oh, it's
considered, the vine snake
gorgeous.
isn't terrible. It's got great stealth and is an excellent climber. But I mean, just look at this thing. With the lowest
It's
HP
beautiful.
and defensive stats of any
Is
snake,
it not? Look
this
at
build
it.
folds to absolutely any attack.
Well,
Vine snakes entrust their survival to their above-average stealth stat, but if that fails and the vine snake is discovered, they resort to intimidation.
so cute!
Their intimidation
Oh my
tactic
god!
consists of sticking out their brightly
It's
colored tongue as a
adorable.
warning. Much like with the blue-tongued skink, I don't consider this to be a particularly effective defensive display, especially when this warning is backed by some of the weakest venom in the snake faction. Definitely not F tier due to its decent camouflage, but with nothing else going for it, it's stuck in D tier.
Tiger
Next in D
keelback.
tier we have the tiger keelback. This snake build breaks the mold when it comes to toxic strategies in snakes,
Really?
as rather than dumping all of its evolution points into venom, the keelback also
are
allocates
those?
some of its resources into becoming poisonous, meaning that they can inflict
What?
a toxic status effect both when dealing damage and when taking damage. This extra defensive
Interesting.
ability definitely raises the keelback's
I've never
ranking
seen
compared
that
to most
before on
Colubrid
a
snakes.
snake.
However, overall, it's still not that great.
Yeah.
Both their venom
It
and
wouldn't
their
be.
poison aren't all that potent, and it's possible that going all in on one of these strategies might have been the better play in the long run. Still, the keelback strategy does mitigate one of the Colubrid faction's main weaknesses though, which is that they have a hard time using their venom defensively. Many Colubrids, including the vine snake and keelback, are
Look at
venomous.
her.
This is useful
I want
because, I mean,
one.
how else would a snake barely thicker than a piece of spaghetti deal any damage, right?
So
The
cute.
problem is, Colubrids lack the efficient venom delivery abilities found in the more dangerous snake builds. Their fangs are located at the back of their mouths.
That's so
And these
stupid.
fangs don't actually inject venom.
What?
The venom is just kind of part of their saliva, so to deal any damage with it, they need to really chew on their target for a good chunk of time. As you might expect, this makes individual strikes from most venomous colubrids quite harmless, as they don't contain much venom per hit, and they also can't really use their fangs unless they get a really solid bite in. So the keelback's poison does sort of cover for this weakness, which is great, and for that it gets to the top of D tier. However, a defensive poison is by no means the only way to mitigate the drawbacks of having rear fangs, as we'll see as we move out of the low tier and into mid tier.
Okay.
At
Boom
the bottom of
slang.
C tier we have the Boomslang, the most
Blum
venomous
slang.
snake build from the Colubrid faction. This snake kind of just does everything the vine snake does, but better. It's an excellent climber and has great camouflage,
That's sad.
but also packs a devastating bite with extremely
Vine snake
overpowered
is
venom
cuter.
for its tier in terms of potency.
I don't
And
care
while it
at
does
me.
have rear fangs, they're significantly larger than most colubrids. But its best adaptation is that the Boomslang can open its mouth far wider than most
Look at
snakes,
that.
allowing it to
Look at
deliver
that
a
little
venom-infused
fucker.
bite in spite of the unfavorable location of its fangs. This allows the Boomslang to go toe-to-toe with high-tier builds like the Chameleon, as well as let it use its potent venom as a defensive
I
threat
mean, the
rather than
chameleon
solely
isn't
just
the
a
most
hunting tool.
intimidating
Now, obviously, this
animal.
is still far from ideal. Its venom is quite slow acting, making it not that useful when under attack. In my opinion, the Boomslang is the perfect example of a snake that really just needs one or two more buffs to be a high tier build, but in its current state, it just doesn't quite get there. At the
King
top of C
snake.
tier, we have our last member of the Colubrid faction, the King Snake. The King Snake is a large snake build with
It's like a
no
mid-boss.
venom-based abilities. Instead, this is the first constrictor build on our list.
What? It's so tiny.
Is a type of grappling attack that, when properly executed, results in a guaranteed KO, even on extremely large targets. Its main drawback is that this attack strategy is highly vulnerable to disruption. A constrictor player has to be able to survive all counterattacks from its target while attempting to restrain it. So with that said, you'd think it'd be very difficult to use this technique against a venomous snake, right? Snakes are so flexible that it's very difficult to grapple them without giving them an easy opportunity to bite back.
That was
That's
rad.
where the king snake's second ability, venom resistance, comes in. The ability to ignore all damage from a snake's venom makes the king snake's matchup against other snakes horribly one-sided. Just for good measure, king snakes have high enough accuracy on their attacks that they tend to go for the head, which negates a snake's counterattack potential even further. This is about where the king snake's supremacy ends though, as the rest of its matchups are pretty standard for a snake, and with no venom of its own, it doesn't pose much of a threat to players it can't reliably immobilize in its coils. Luckily, there's a pretty simple change a constrictor build can make in order to increase the effectiveness of its constriction: size.
Yeah, size.
Boas and pythons are the poster children for this type of strategy, being the only snake builds that can be properly classified as tanks. While technically these are two different factions, they are functionally extremely similar and both contain specific examples of highly effective tanky snakes. Although boas and pythons have no venom, their large teeth and incredibly high physical stats.
Wait, I need to see that again.
Pythons have no venom, their large teeth and incredibly high physical stats make them more than a match for just about any player that challenges them directly. With their thick scales and huge size,
oh my god,
it's very difficult to defeat one of these in a 1v1 quickly. Their ability to tank
I didn't
a lot
know
of
they
hits
were
during
that
a fight
tanky.
means that even extremely powerful builds like
dude
are in for quite an uphill
yo,
if they choose to stand and fight.
That's awesome.
Well-statted builds with high defense and DPS, like the crocodilian factions, are easily overcome with brute strength once a boa or python uses their piercing fangs and
fucking insane. I've never seen that shit before in my life.
Drawbacks to the constriction strategy are
holy shit,
third-party attacks, and the immense cost of failed kills.
Yoink.
While many constrictors have the size required to challenge other large builds, going after too powerful a target can expend a disproportionate amount of HP compared to other snakes. As large builds are often more conspicuous,
it was like, yo, it was like asking me, he was begging for help for that.
Amount of HP compared to other snakes. As large builds are often more conspicuous, the most successful constrictor players will make good use of the camouflage ability.
There it is.
Out of the boa faction, the most powerful build is without a doubt the Anaconda. These are among the heaviest of any snake and by far the tankiest, with an HP stat that renders most physical attacks almost negligible. While Anacondas are significantly less viable on land due to their greatly reduced speed on terrestrial maps, their mobility, stealth, and camouflage bonuses in the aquatic
is horrifying.
Make them nearly unbeatable in that biome. Anacondas are capable of serious speed when their buoyancy abilities can counteract the limitations of their enormous size, making nearly any unsuspecting player who enters the water an easy target. Their eyes and noses are oriented towards the top of their faces, allowing them to expend minimal energy while camouflaged in aquatic vegetation.
That's so scary.
For the perfect opportunity to carry out an ambush attack.
Oh my god.
Despite
don't bring your kids to lakes,
people. And proficiency in highly specialized forms of gameplay, the fact that Anacondas are only truly viable
that's a fucking panther.
Limits their utility and places them squarely in B tier. The most competitive build in the Python faction is the Burmese Python. While many snake builds are competitively viable only on certain maps that suit their specialized abilities, Burmese Pythons fit into more of a jack-of-all-trades playstyle and have sufficient mobility in aquatic, terrestrial, and arboreal biomes, in spite of their large size. Burmese Pythons are therefore excellent generalist builds, and as seen with many other generalists, they have been causing serious disruption in servers that they weren't meant to be spawning in. Burmese Pythons have totally destabilized the meta of the Florida Everglades.
Oh my god.
Due mostly to the Python's extremely one-sided matchup against non-social mammal builds, and a lack of the type of builds that normally keep the Python player base in check.
Monkeys?
Now, thankfully, the current top tier of the Everglades is quite capable of defeating or repelling a Python in single combat. But because the alligator's dominance is restricted to the aquatic zones, Pythons essentially have complete control of the arboreal zone, which has led to a drastic reduction in players running mammal builds like the rabbit, raccoon, fox, and bobcat.
No, not the
Burmese
bobcat.
Pythons come in at the top of B tier due to their versatility. Their low speed stat and lack of venom makes higher tier snakes much more viable choices for most gameplay styles.
Okay.
While some snake builds in lower tiers can use the venom skill, placement in A tier or higher rides almost exclusively on choosing to dump a majority of evolution points into maximizing venom efficiency and delivery methods. Members of the Viper class dominate the A tier. Among the most feared builds in the game, Vipers have a variety of special offensive and sensory skills that help compensate for their generally low defense stats.
Smells your
long,
fear.
Hollow fangs are placed at the front of their mouths and can pierce most armor to deliver lethal doses
like fingers.
of venom. But one drawback to the flesh-destroying hemotoxins used by most builds in this group is that they can take a while to immobilize players. Most Viper builds also spec into the infrared heat sensing ability, making them extremely powerful nocturnal ambush attackers and compensating for their lack of speed. Some members of the Viper faction tack on tail adaptations too, for access to the intimidation and luring abilities. But
I thought that was an insect. Oh my god, I would have fallen for that shit.
Coming in at the bottom of A tier are Gaboon Vipers, combining the highest defense stat of any venomous build, with near unbeatable stealth and an incredibly high strike speed. Despite their bulky appearance, Gaboon Vipers are almost invisible to spot during gameplay, and are notorious for destroying unsuspecting players due to the sheer volume of venom delivered during an attack, despite the relatively underpowered toxicity compared to other Vipers. With the longest fangs of any Viper, they can deal significant physical piercing damage, in addition to any toxic effects caused by the venom.
Christ, look at those.
They conserve energy by remaining motionless when not in combat, and are rather difficult to provoke into unnecessary confrontation. While Gaboon Vipers are an excellent choice for ambush-based play in jungle maps, their lack of versatility and low aggression means they can be easily outmaneuvered by other builds. Cottonmouths rank slightly higher in A tier due to their rare ability to use the skill set of the Viper class effectively in the aquatic realm.
Really?
As the only Viper build in the game with aquatic adaptations, their potent venom and fishhook-shaped fangs make them incredibly effective at farming out fish and frog players for easy XP. This build specs into the Caudal luring ability at lower levels,
cute.
allowing them to quickly become competitive and shed this ability at higher levels in favor of better camouflage.
That is so
Cottonmouths
cool.
are also relatively tanky and escape many combat situations by using intimidation tactics. Their dominance in aquatic maps makes them able to occasionally overcome more competitive generalist builds, but this is limited by biome and therefore not useful during the majority of gameplay.
I thought they were cuddling.
Rounding out
other
A
one
tier
started
is the
eating
Rattlesnake. Best suited for desert and forest biomes, these snakes combine a variety of overpowered special abilities with well-allocated base stats. Rattlesnakes are highly capable builds for ambush-based stealth play due to their ability to create thermal maps of other players in low-visibility situations, which makes them one of the most effective counters for mammal players with the night vision ability. Instead of risking health by grappling with other players,
such a big rabbit.
rattlesnakes deliver a lethal amount of venom in one quick strike.
That is a big hair.
Use their prey tracking ability to find them after they've succumbed to toxic status effects. One major advantage for rattlesnake players is the highly effective rattle intimidation technique, which allows them to scare off more powerful challengers without wasting venom or risking serious damage. While rattlesnakes sit at the top of A tier due to their relatively well-rounded stats among members of the Viper class,
Here we go, S
all
tier.
Viper builds are still classified as glass cannons and tend to lose out against opponents with quicker acting venom, superior speed, or high enough HP to tank their attacks. Snake builds placing in S tier overcome the weaknesses of other venom users by maxing out mobility stats and employing a variety of highly effective venom delivery techniques. The most competitively viable snakes spec into heavily neurotoxic venom, granting them the ability to inflict toxic damage and status effects far more quickly than lower tier venom users. While these buffs come at the cost of base defense, S tier snakes are only really weak to the rare few players with venom resistance or effective bite evasion.
It's a mongoose, right?
Coming up first in S tier is the Cobra build. With impressive base speed, these snakes can actively chase down other players rather than having to solely rely on an
that's a
ambush
cobra.
Variants of the Cobra build can spec into moderate aquatic and climbing proficiency, allowing for particularly well-rounded gameplay.
So weird looking.
Their fast-acting venom is mostly neurotoxic, but can have mixed toxic effects that melt through flesh and maximize the amount of pain inflicted. Even elephant players, the tankiest terrestrial build in the entire game, can be taken down by the ridiculous amount of sheer toxic damage inflicted by a well-placed bite. While all Cobra builds have forward-placed fangs to maximize venom delivery, Spitting Cobra players can use the only ranged attack in the entire snake class by spraying venom up to 2 meters through holes at the front of their
How
fangs.
effective is that?
This move has high accuracy and can permanently blind other players when used effectively.
It shoots in the eye.
Cobra builds advertise their power by using a unique hood modification, intimidating the vast majority of players away from trying to challenge them in the first place. With enough offensive capabilities to take on an entire team of attackers at once, it's no question that Cobras are one of the most competitively viable builds in the Snake faction.
This is such a cool shot. These snakes. I know these are like super dangerous.
With full aquatic adaptations and special underwater sensory skills. These
oh
builds
my god.
can access hard to reach
I didn't
areas
even see that shit coming.
Even the most competitive fish players. Their fangs are relatively small compared to the closely related Cobra builds, but this works in conjunction with a special attack style. Their venom is some of the deadliest in the game, but causes almost no pain, meaning that other players may not even know they've been hit before fatal toxic damage sets in. While they are effective at using trickster tactics to take down enemies independently, Sea Snake players can also hunt in teams to capitalize on their own offensive potential and compensate for their low individual HP.
That's cool.
This build does have a bit of a high skill floor though, and inexperienced players may struggle at playing around the Sea Snake's defensive weaknesses. The Sea Snake build has a unique playstyle that can be hard to master, but with the ability to 1v1 eels and win, this build sits at the top for those who enjoy a challenge.
Ah, the Black Mamba,
Final build on this tier list is the Black Mamba. With incredibly overpowered base stats for their class, including ridiculous damage and speed, the Black Mamba is by far the most competitive snake, both in terrestrial and arboreal combat situations. Their speed isn't just with respect to movement. The lethal venom of the Black Mamba takes effect extremely quickly, and can decimate enemies of any size due to the high dose delivered in each bite. Black Mamba venom imposes a variety of neurological status effects, including respiratory failure and vision loss, making them one of the most feared opponents in direct combat.
You fucking stupid
Mamba builds
rat.
have an extremely aggressive and fast-paced playstyle that leaves little room for counterplay.
What the hell's happening here?
Especially considering that their HP and defense stats are among the highest of any venom users.
Are they cuddling? Is this a sex thing?
While they don't have any unique moves to speak of, Black Mambas dominate by using strategies common among snake players, and do so to an exceptionally effective degree.
Fearlessness, aggression when
topping the charts with the highest DPS potential of any snake, and respectable defensive skills.
That's a fucking lion.
The Black Mamba is the undisputed ruler of snake builds.
Jesus Christ.
Snakes are by no means meta-defining, but it's still worth knowing how they stack up against each other and what their main strengths
and weaknesses are. That fucking thing just chewed off its tail.
There's a lot more to snakes than just their general combat
The snake just let him do it.
How do snakes deal with cold damage? How can snakes climb trees so easily without claws or cling pads? If you're really interested in knowing all the ins and outs of the snake build, I highly recommend checking out this video's sponsor, CuriosityStream. They have this excellent documentary called The Secret Lives of Snakes, which answers a lot of questions I didn't even know I had about snakes. It goes into way more depth than I have time for here on YouTube. And hey, speaking of videos that don't fit neatly into my YouTube channel, did you know that I have a Nebula series called Let's Play Outside? It's my take on Let's Play style content. I just released a new episode featuring the cheetah as my main.
Look at that.
But I also have some old episodes featuring a few dinosaurs, as well as one where I main
Sucker for punishment.
CuriosityStream is normally $20 a year, but I do have a special deal just for Tiers viewers. 26% off the annual membership, and it comes bundled for free with Nebula, meaning you can get access to dozens of high-quality documentaries, plus a whole bunch of awesome original videos.
It's really tempting,
from dozens
actually.
Of great
oh my
YouTubers,
god, I'm such a nerd.
Like Real Life Lore, Low Spec Gamer, Real Engineering, and Lessons from the Screenplay. Oh, and also me, all for only $14.79 a year. So don't miss out on the best deal in streaming. Head to the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/tierzu to get started. Thank you so much for watching. Big thanks to my very patient patrons on Patreon. Seriously, sorry it took so long. I promise future videos will come out quicker. Anyways, thanks again, and until next time, good luck out there.
Awesome. Well, that was really, really cool. I didn't know snakes were that varied. That's really awesome. I love stuff like this. I'm definitely gonna react more to his stuff in the future. I've just seen every single other one, so I haven't been able to react to them. Because, you know, I'm not... I don't do that. So. Well, I'm gonna go edit this now. Thank you, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Oh, follow my fucking Twitch, even though I am on hiatus. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys next video. Bye bye.